Hello friends, today we shall read the Ignited Minds by APJ Abdul Kalam. The second reading we will start today. Okay, we'll start from chapter 1, Dreams and the Message. The Dream and the Message. Dream, dream, dream. Dreams transform into thoughts and thoughts result in action. On 30th September 2001, I was on my way to Bokaro from Ranchi in Jharkhand when the helicopter carrying me crashed moments before landing. It hit the earth with a thud after its engine failed. All of us on board had a miraculous escape. Grateful to God and unfazed by the incident, I went ahead with my scheduled program of addressing the students in Bokaro. At night, however, a panel of doctors persuaded me to take a tranquilizer to alleviate my perceived shock. The drug made me sleep hours ahead of my usual time, 1 a.m., and also failed to rise at my usual 6 a.m. and woke up only after 8 o'clock. It was, however, a disturbed sleep, and sometime in the middle of it, I fell to thinking why the human race, the best of all God's creation, has been so deeply divided by violence. I imagined a conversation with five people who together symbolize the finest attributes of the human mind, whom I admire deeply. Through their conversation, I sought an answer. In this experience, much more intense and vivid than a dream, though for want of a better word, I shall term it that, I saw myself in a desert with miles of sand all around. There was a full moon, and the desert was bathed in its light. Five men, Mahatma Gandhi, Albert Einstein, Emperor Ashoka, Abraham Lincoln, and Caliph Omar, stood in a circle, their clothes ruffled by the wind. I felt myself doffed standing next to the majestic Emperor Ashoka. Ashoka led two lives, one as a ruthless conqueror and the other as a compassionate ruler. The man I stood beside was the one who had just returned from conquest. But victory had been obtained at heavy cost. The Battle of Kalinga claimed the lives of at least 300,000 people and an equal number were wounded. I saw everyone looking at Ashoka, who fell on his knees and removed his armor and crown. His face was pale, reflecting the death surrounding him. He looked at the sky. He saw the bright, cool moon shining and God's grace pouring down on Mother Earth. And he looked down at the horror he had created, making blood flow everywhere. In that moment of beauty and horror, the silver moonlight and the sufferings and the pain on the ground, where nature itself seemed to speak out against what he had wrought. Ahimsa Dharma was born. Emperor Ashoka embraced God's command to propagate love for human beings through this doctrine. As I stood by, I wondered why the Kalinga War, why the assassination of Mahatma Gandhi and of Abraham Lincoln, or many others like them. Has God Almighty faltered in His creation? Faltered means made a fault. Is the destruction of mankind essential for a second creation? In that in that blissful silence, the Mahatma spoke. Friends, the divine message we are hearing is the message of creation. Since we all belong to planet Earth, we may give a message to mankind how people of different races, religions, and languages can live peacefully and prosperously together. God Almighty has blessed us all with something unique that we have passed on to mankind through our deeds and efforts. In that working, is there any divine message or doctrine? Divine beauty should enter the human soul and happiness blossom in the body and mind. Is it possible? Ashoka said, Friends, there is one thing I have realized. There is no victory in causing suffering. Triumph is a peaceful kingdom. Okay. Winning is having a peaceful kingdom. Caliph Omar said, I learned after I entered Jerusalem that all men are equal. There is no point in forcing others to follow your path. You will get only what which is ordained for you. Ordained means you are what you are supposed to get according to your effort or your or whatever you deserve. God alone is the sovereign. Sovereign means topmost, highest. Okay, he is the sovereign authority. Okay, Caliph Omar never saw his position in terms of the special privileges that it carried. To him, government was a sacred trust, and he did his best not to betray the trust in any way. It was Einstein's turn. I would like to recall my friend Werner Hessingberg Burke's view. You know, in the West, we have built a large, beautiful ship. It has all the comforts in it, but one thing is missing. It has no compass and does not know where to go. Men like Tagore and Gandhi and their spiritual forebears found the compass. Why can this compass not be put in the human ship so that both can realize their purpose? Abraham Lincoln, the great American leader who fought against slavery and whose life paralleled that of Mahatma in certain respects, said at this point, there is one thing that I would like to say. Happiness comes from a family's prosperity at various levels. God's grace gives bliss to human lives. Happiness and bliss are two important components of a good life on earth. Perhaps there is no much conflict between peoples and nations because in our pursuit of prosperity and power we have lost sight of ethical values. We must ask ourselves, what is the role of human consciousness? Does it have a part in political thinking, scientific thinking, and theological thinking? Is spirituality acceptable in the business of life? Mahatma Gandhi recalled sage Ashtavakra propounded on my son, O my son, you are the very consciousness within which arises this phenomenal universe that is not separate from what you are. How can there be a question of anything being acceptable or unacceptable? Let the business of life be peace and prosperity and not exploitation and conflict. This is our message to the planet. Everything that we do, any doctrine that we espouse, should be for the good of humankind. The next morning, I kept sitting for some time, drinking my tea and pondering about this strange dream. What if the helicopter had lost power at some more height? Just a few hours before my own mishap, a plane carrying a promising leader and a team of young and talented journalists had crashed, killing all. I had been lucky to survive, and now there was the night's experience that seemed to hold a message for me. What should I do? I looked out of the window. The sun was well up in the sky, and there was a soothing breeze. I have always lived in close touch with nature, and have always found it a friend giving without reservation. With the mango tree, without reservation, like the mango tree. People throw stones at it, break off its branches, but it still offers its shade to the weary traveler and its fruits to the hungry. Whether it was the sea at Rameshwaram, Tumba, and Chandipur, the desert at Pokhran, or the gigantic boulders in Hyderabad, nature has always made its presence felt wherever I have worked. It has helped to remind me of the divine force that pervades all of creation. I kept on pondering over my dream, and yet the history of the world shows the forces of good struggling hard to make life better for mankind, while the human race also shows a terrible capacity for destruction. Thus, we have Gandhi and other great saints and teachers who lay down the precepts for a happy and virtuous life on the one hand, and on the other hand, the death of millions in the Second World War and the dropping of atomic bombs that destroyed entire cities. Thousands have died in the Bosnia conflict. The Israel Palestine conflict continues to take lives. And on the 11th September 2001, terrorists used a new tactic to take lives when they struck at the World Trade Center in New York. At home, in the Bhopal gas tragedy, 30,000 people died as a result of a carelessness of a multinational company, and more have died in the Kashmir Valley violence. On 13 December 2001, when the leaders of India were in parliament, an attempt was made by the terrorists to paralyze the country. Where will it all stop? Are we doomed to destroy ourselves? Are we? No, we have to find an everlasting solution. I recall a poem I wrote a few years ago, The Tree of Life. You, the human race, are the best of my creation. You will live and give till you are united in happiness and pain. My bliss will be born in you. Love is a continuum. That is the mission of humanity. You will see every day in the life tree. You learn and learn, my best of creations. The five great human beings I saw in my dream lived in a different time, lived at different times. In the modern world, there are few examples of human beings who embody the qualities that come from realizing the nature of the mind. Once a child asked me if I had read the Mahabharata, and if so, who was my favorite character in it. The multifaceted characters in the epic represents almost every aspect of human nature, good as well as bad. I told the child that I was particularly attracted to the character of Vidura, who showed grit, who showed grit against the wrongdoings of authorities and had the courage to differ when everyone else chose to surrender before the tyranny of adharma.